Are you one of the thousands of people who are afraid of tech? Do you find yourself saying, "Oh, I'm not tech savvy," or "That's too techy for me to figure out"? If you've ever said this to yourself, you want to stay tuned. Welcome to the Biz Success in 15. I'm your host, Cindy J, the Visibility Wiz, and I'm here to guide you as you step into who you are with outrageous confidence for more visibility, influence, and profits. You can download your copy of the Visibility Checklist at visibilitychecklist.com. Today, we're speaking about taming the tech monster with Anke Hermann. She's a multi-passionate coach, online tech expert, teacher, software developer, linguist, dressmaker with the heart of a creator and the mind of an engineer. She's the author of Taming the Tech Monster and hosts the Passion Business Podcast. She helps mission-driven coaches and educators with high-end group programs create well-designed tech systems to delight their clients so that they can get what they came for, stay longer, and refer others. Welcome, Anke. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so let's just get really started because so many people, as I said at the beginning, always say that they're not tech savvy. So, can you tell me some of the biggest pitfalls whenever it comes to using tech to deliver online programs?
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. Like I guess people the biggest pitfalls that I see is that people skip steps. I always say when it feels hard, you're skipping steps, right? So most of the time struggles come to the surface when somebody is trying to set up something in some platform, right? And every single time when you have a closer look, that's not actually where the problem is, right?
Mm,
The reason that affects a lot of people, even the ones who go, oh, I'm actually quite tech savvy. Like I find my way, I whiz my way around
mm,
different tech tools. There is, I think a lot of it is how these platforms are marketed, right? Because on the one hand, you have your business, you have an idea of what you want to create to market your business, to deliver your courses. And on the other end, there are platforms, some for courses, some for payment, some for, marketing and different things, right? And the problem is there's a piece in the middle that nobody really talks about, right? Software platforms talk about, oh, just do my thing. Like all the tech will be taken care of, no coding experience required,
right.
as if that was your problem, right? That's never been the problem in the first place. But they basically show you how to use their software, right?
Mhm.
And over here you have your idea, but what nobody shows you is how to translate. Well, I want to have a smooth onboarding experience. I want to market my business in a certain way. How do you take that and translate that into a system of lists and tags and automations to actually make that happen? That's the piece nobody knows about. That's the piece everybody skips. So when
Right.
it comes to fiddling with buttons and forms, they don't know where to go. So that's like, not slowing down enough. And every single time I ask somebody who feels like, oh, the tech does my head in,
Mhm.
every single time when I ask them to say, okay, so how do you want this to work? I'd say, for example, and they go, well, they enroll. Okay, what does that mean? Well,
Mm.
they press a button. And then what, right? So every single time when I'm kind of start digging, because in order to use tech platforms, they demand precision, right? And
Right.
they demand precision that most people don't know how to give it. So they will always like, well, I want people to enroll. But when you dig, like, what does it actually look like? What do you want me to see the moment I have paid? What do you want me to find in my inbox 5 minutes later? What do I want? How do you want me to find out about calls you have? Where do I go to find the learning materials, right? All these things,
Right.
usually people haven't thought those through. And
You
that's
know,
why it hurts on the other side when that gets confusing and it gets frustrating quickly.
with so many clients that I've had, and like the first thing I always tell everybody, let's start to build your list. So then they always have the questions like, how do they do it? And then where do they store it at? Right. But I was working with a client. She did really well. She set up her opt-in page, beautiful opt-in page, beautiful thank you page, and did everything. But she was going crazy. She phoned me up, like pulling her hair out, like, how come nothing's happening whenever they click this form? How come they're not getting the gift? Because she didn't add a tag.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like those very simple, and this is, I believe, what you're talking about. Like the mail systems are like, hey, we're going to automate all your emails. And she figured out like how to do all this other stuff, but there's no instruction. You have to add a tag, which tells the system to send out the email.
Yeah. And that's the piece. Like, look, I've got exactly that. I actually got to see this when I was hired for somebody else's program to help people. Actually, they knew sort of what to do, but they kind of didn't know how. And I really got to see it there because people came for an implementation session, and it was literally, and I remember there was somebody who came on the call and she goes, well, I've got my lead magnet, I've got my landing page, I've got all the emails, everything's written out. I use whatever the platform and I know how to use it. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a very short call then, right? Oh no, 2.5 hours later, I really understood the problem at a whole new level, because what I got to see was that people are actually dealing with, okay, there's the content. Then there is the tool. Then there is the look of things, because she was getting lost in how to get the perfect purple grade for the background of the button, right? And then there was the sequence of steps, right? And what steps are necessary and in what sequence so to make it all work. That's the piece that people don't even know about. But then even navigating from nitty-gritty detail to overall big picture flow, that felt like a roller coaster ride. And so many times throughout that session, she said to me, oh my God, if you weren't here, I would have given up in frustration now, right? And it's really that always comes down to when it feels hard, you're skipping steps. So the question's always like, what am I skipping? Slow down, right? What is it that because that's the thing. If you're not used to these things, if that's not second nature to you, trying to do these 4 things all at once is going to be frustrating, right? So it's literally always, the tip is to slow down and split it out and make sure you don't try to do too much all at once.
What I like about this, what I always say is, like, whenever you're using these text systems, they're all recipes. Like, you have to figure out the recipe. Once you know the recipe, write it down and repeat it. And they said a lot of the recipes you don't necessarily have to put all the ingredients in a certain order most of the time, but sometimes you do. And like my ex-husband, he worked with chemicals, and when he was very young, but he thought that he would take a shortcut and throw in this one chemical before another one, and he started a fire. And I'm like, and it's the same thing with the tech. It's like, there's some things that you have to do before you add the next one, or else you're going to cause an explosion. So do you agree with that?
Absolutely, I agree with that. And it actually brings up another one of those pitfalls that is really like rampant with people who sort of hate the tech. There is, for some reason, an assumption or an expectation that, oh, I should just know all that. Right. And when you think about it, there are quite a few elements, right? And you get it, like when you hear what people ask, and I'm like, well, yeah, there is a lot of stuff on a lot of different levels, right? And if I always compare it with, like, if you are out to become like a really successful lawyer, right? So first thing you do, you go to law school, right? And then you come out after several years of full-time study, you come out a baby lawyer, and then you need to get some experience, right? So with tech, people for some reason think they can just watch some YouTube videos and magically know it all, right? So I'm basically always saying, well, give yourself some slack. Like, get something to work. Don't try to do the most complex thing. And that's actually one of the other pitfalls, is people overcomplicate things when the task should really be to validate their offer. I always say, when you have something, you have an idea for something, Like, don't tinker with tech toys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, sell it with the tools you have. It's not the time to learn new tools to make something sophisticated that you don't even know yet whether it's even going to fly. So
Right.
once you have something that's validated, then you want to make sure you're not oversimplifying, because that's going to bite you in the backside
Right.
as badly as oversimplifying it. But so often people overwhelm themselves with a lot of stuff they don't really need at the stage in their offer that they're at,
Right. They're trying to solve problems they don't have yet.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, how do these pitfalls and problems, how do they affect even people who are very tech savvy?
Yeah, because I think quite often we talk about taming the tech monster, and everybody thinks, oh, well, yeah, oh, I hate tech, I'm not good at it. But people who are tech savvy, they have, first of all, the same problem, in a sense that gap between, oh, here's my idea and here is the nitty gritty of the tech, that bit in the middle, that fleshing out of the details of how exactly something should work and what the options are and what the implications are of each of those. I've not come across anybody who says, I'm tech savvy, who was actually really good at that. Like, even in big software projects, most business analysts aren't any good at it. So most people skip that step, even if they're tech savvy. And if they're tech savvy, the temptation to get lost in the tech rabbit hole and go and tinker from one toy to the next and sign up here and sign up there and create this giant mess, because the expectation that tech's going to solve all your problems, right? And that you want to have it all sophisticated, because if you have fear, you might not kind of get close enough to the tools that you actually might want to use. But if you're tech savvy, chances are you're going to spend so much time tinkering with new toys that you also don't focus on what you actually want to focus on. So it doesn't really help you much if you're tech savvy.
Too, it could be like I had a client who was an engineer, so very techie, and he wanted to like rewrite everything. Like, I would tell him, use this system. Oh, I don't like the way it works. So he'd try to write all of his own code. And I'm like, dude, you're making this so much harder than it has to be.
Exactly. Right. So it's like, you can overcomplicate it. You can pay too much attention to it, and you can get lost trying to find the perfect tool. And then, if you know how to write code, that's even worse, because then you run off and reinvent the wheel somewhere. When the ultimate objective is you have an offer that you want to sell, right? So yeah, definitely.
So what is the best way to go about setting up tech systems?
I think it comes down a lot to the slowing down, and it actually comes down to taking time, like, this slow down to speed up, right? To slow down and think through what you want your client to experience. Like, how do you actually want this to work at a very detailed level, right? And then I always say to start, because you can automate a lot of things, right? You can automate the delivery of your program. You can automate, you can use tech tools to collect payments. You can use tech tools to do your marketing. I always say, well, okay, you want to start in the delivery, you start in the back. Like, how can you make the access to whatever learning materials you offer, how can you make that easy? Just start there, right? And you go on and say, well, okay, how can I make sure I make it as easy as possible for people to come to the live calls, so they know when it is in their time zone. They don't have to try and run around, try and find the Zoom link. It gets added to their calendar, make the recordings available easily. Tackle that, right? And then you go to the next thing, and not everything at once, and not all the offers all at once, sort it out for one offer. And I think really one step at a time, and literally get somebody else to test it, like to go through it, because I think we are often also too close to the elephant. You go, well, that's all easy. Like, you kind of, because you have a half of it, like you have it all in your mind, like you have it all in your head. And it's really hard to put yourself into the shoes of somebody who has no idea, right? Who doesn't know the platform, who kind of comes like, oh, well, I don't like, literally get somebody, a client, a
Yeah.
virtual assistant, like somebody from your team. Okay, go through this. What do you see? Where do you get confused? Right? Because the person who creates it, yeah, you're probably not the best person to make that judgment. But to start
Exactly.
off, like, how do you want that flow
Right.
to be? Right? Because like I had an inquiry once where somebody asked me, real story, sounds really funny when you tell it like that. She goes, hey, I want to create a mastermind for my existing clients. Should I use Slack or Telegram?
Right.
And I'm like, okay. Like, that's kind of, for me, it was like an odd combination, but somebody had told her, right? And please don't ask in Facebook groups, right? Because what's the best platform? Asking the Facebook group, like, that's not like a good idea, because nobody knows what's best for you. Everybody just throws names at you of platforms that they've heard of, and that's not helpful. So that's what happened to her. So she asked that, and I'm like, okay. So first of all, have you asked your clients whether they even want a mastermind? Oh,
Right.
no, well, that might be a good first
Well,
step.
for time purposes here, let's sort of move on. I would love for you to share a 15-minute challenge that our listeners can do, a 15-minute action step that they can do that will help them.
Yes. Oh, great. Actually, I'm gonna recommend my favorite game, and that is, ask for what you really want, not what you think you need. Right? So next time you're looking to ask for help, and that can be Googling, it can be asking somebody. Most people will go, how do I change the button on this thing? And you go, what? Like,
Right.
classic case, like an example, real life example from the beginning of the pandemic. Somebody goes, so how can I compress a video? I'm like, why on earth would you compress a video? Well, I need to email it. Why would you email a video? Well, I did the Zoom workshop and now I need to send out the recording, right?
Right.
So now if you try Googling compress a video, you're in the world of codecs and video formats, and it's just a giant mess. Now that's not really
I'm
what
not
she
even that
wanted.
tech savvy.
She just wanted a way to send out the recording. So
Right.
what I'm suggesting is ask for, hey, how can I send out a call recording?
Exactly.
And somebody will say, just upload it to YouTube and send out the link, right? So when you ask for what you really want, so before you type, when you catch yourself typing something or asking someone, okay, I'm asking for this, why? What do I actually want? I'm asking for this because of that, because of that. Like, you go back, why do I need this? Why do I need this? Until you come down to what it is you actually really want to do. And get yourself into that habit, and you'll see the results you get, the help you get, the information you find online will be 100% more helpful and useful than if you just ask for what you think you need.
Exactly. I love that. Absolutely love that. Because, yeah, if you say, how do I compress a video? It's going to give you so much different results than how do I send out a video to my people. So whenever you're thinking with the end mind, start with the end. Start with
Absolutely.
start with
And
what
get
you
into that
actually
habit. Make it a
want, that
game.
end result, versus, because you could be, a lot of times whenever you start with that end result, you'll get the answer that might take you 10 minutes to do, versus if you're trying to do something a different way, it could take you 10 hours to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. Last question I have for you is, you share that there's 2 ways you can get yourself into tech trouble, even if you're tech savvy. So can you share those 2 ways with us?
Yeah. And the 2 ways have to do with the way something, like anything, is created. Like, if we take an online program, like, the first step is always like, you have to validate your idea, right? You don't want to build out a whole complex system if you don't know whether people will buy it. Once you have that, it's time to flesh it out, to develop it. And if you then want to go big, you can scale it. Now, in that initial validation phase, you want to use the tools you have. And the big pitfall is, like, the big mistake that so many people make, they overcomplicate tech at that point. They worry about landing pages and funnels and all this stuff, what an email would do, right? Or a phone call would do, right? So it's like literally overcomplicating this. Now, the flip side of that scenario, and I've, and that's usually what people come to me for, it's when they actually have something they've validated. And now, that same Google folder that was just fine to send the recordings to that first group of people, when you want to offer your server like that, if you now know this, you want to offer it to more people, that quick PayPal link you chuck together is now going to cause you so much trouble, because the more people you serve with it, then you end up with so much manual, error-prone, time-consuming, annoying manual work that just isn't sustainable, right? So that's the flip side for it. Like if you then oversimplify, just keep it simple, right? That's not going to work for you, and a lot less for your clients when you use the same approach that you used for your pilot group.
And also, I mean, it creates like so much havoc. When I'm thinking of years ago, I used to, with all my programs, I would create password protected pages on my website. And so naturally, my clients have 5 different passwords for 5 different pages. They would get lost. They would never go visit them because it was too confusing. It was too hard. And it was hard for me to manage and upkeep all these. So finally, I invested in a platform that houses all of my programs. So now it's like they're either locked or unlocked, but it's all automated. But I think of how many years I did it that other way, which was a lot more difficult, because now I don't have to worry about it. Once it's in there, which I have my VA does everything, it's there, it's all automated. I don't have to do nothing manual.
Yeah. And now it's easy to create something new, because you already have you already have all your pieces in place. Mm-hmm. So now to create something new, yes, you can start straight out with something sophisticated, because that's now easier for you because you've got all the pieces in place. Right. But when you haven't got anything, don't worry with that when you haven't sold your thing yet.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly. And so, Anke, I know you have a wonderful gift for our listeners. Can you share what that is?
It's a PDF copy of my book, Taming the Tech Monster. It's a quick read. It's pretty much story-based, and it'll change your mind about how you think about tech, what it is, what it can do for you. And it's, when you look at it, it's like it has a little dragon on it, and the little dragon really says what it's all about. It's what feels like a scary monster. It's just a friendly little dragon that wants to play. All right. So if you find that joy and confidence and tech really doesn't go in the same sentence for you, then that's the book for you.
And what's the URL for them to get it?
It's tamingthetechmonster.com.
Okay. So go to tamingthetechmonster.com and download your free gift from Anke. You'll be glad you did. And do you have any last thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
There's something I remind people all the time is, when it feels hard, question your assumptions before you question your capabilities.
I love that. Question your assumptions before you question your capabilities. That is such wise advice. Thank you so very much. And thank you again for being my guest today. It's been an honor.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And to our listeners, you want to be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Biz Success in 15, for you to step into who you are with outrageous confidence for more visibility, influence, and profits. And remember to go to visibilitychecklist.com and get your free checklist. Have a great day. Bye-bye.